You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
I love you so much, baby, for that introduction. My name is Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Joe Elder.
And you're listening to Paleo Radio. I don't know if it's my headphones, brand new headphones, or if it's the mic, but we're so glad that you're here with us today. Public Reality Radio in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 95.3, 1680 AM, and people listening all across the earth, all over the place. You know, here's the thing. We have so many awesome topics for you, Joe, and for all of the listeners today. And we have a cool question of the day that people are able to call in and win another one of those magnets.
We do. We have an amazing question of the day, and it's not about when something went into practice when they voted in on it, but the day that it began, right?
The day
a historical event.
Yes, the day that this law began. It's one of the most notorious laws in American history, and it went into effect today, on this day, January 16th, 2007, not January 16, 2017, January 16th, at some point.
At some point.
In history. At some point.
Yes.
This law in the United States went into effect. Very notorious. One of the most notorious laws, in fact, that we've ever had.
Yeah, so if you guys do get that answer, what you win is an amazing Team Tiny Dancer sticker that can go on your car, as well as an amazing magnet, which is just absolutely fantastical.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's totally amazing. And all you got to do is call 616-656-1680. One more time, those magical numbers, 616-656-1680. Joe, I'll tell you what, man, I'm not going to lie. Totally tired out of my brains, bro. Big time weekend, huge.
Oh, yeah? What'd you do?
Well, I spoke over at Sunday Assembly, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of work all weekend long putting things together, and we had visitors and company, and so I was kind of hiding in different rooms trying to get done what I needed to get done, and of course just getting ready for a show on Monday, to have a morning show, but to speak at Sunday Assembly, and it was the first time since Sammy died. My daughter died of brain cancer in the summer. It's the first time that I have done a speech where it wasn't just simply the story and kind of the aftermath. It was kind of one of those from my heart to you as an individual, right? As a dad, as someone who had a lot to learn through that whole process of her life and death with cancer. And it was powerful. I had to apologize to him. I said, listen, I need to warn you in advance. I am going to cry. I said, this is from my heart. These are special stories from me that I hand selected to want to talk about with you. And I said, honestly, I don't know what it sounds like to throw myself against a wall, but I heard it yesterday and it was awesome. It was a great experience, amazing people. I just wanted to thank them again for that opportunity. So it was awesome.
And if you can, tell people what Sunday Assembly is all about.
Yeah, Sunday Assembly, for those who don't know, I spoke at they invited me last year. This was actually their 1-year anniversary of Sunday Assembly in Grand Rapids. For their launch, they reached out to me to be the speaker for their launch. And I went. Sunday Assembly is a secular gathering to celebrate life. It doesn't require one be an unbeliever. It doesn't require any kind of atheism or agnosticism. It simply requires that while you're there, the focus is not about otherworldly matters, but is about life. And it's a celebration of life. And so, you know, as with everybody, there were ups and downs and all arounds for Sunday Assembly and throughout the year. And so to say fresh beginnings, it was something they wanted to be revitalized. And they said, you know, let's bring him in. And I talked about never give up and keep on smiling. And so, and actually not this upcoming week, our guest is going to be at something I'm doing. We'll talk about that later. But I'll be speaking about love. And I'll be doing that not this Sunday, but the Sunday following to the Sunday Assembly Kalamazoo. So they've invited me. It's going to still be Team Tiny Dancer stuff, life, love, things like that. But that's what Sunday Assembly is. And I encourage people, go check it out. It's an interesting organization. If it's something that you would be interested in or would whet your palate, check it out.
That's right. It gives people a sense of community. I can see a lot of benefits for Sunday Assembly, and obviously it's a great thing if you're speaking at it. So, wonderful stuff.
I mean, hey, if you just went to a Sunday Assembly, somebody's like, hey, you want to check out this Sunday Assembly, you might run into someone like me.
Yeah, there you
true.
go.
Yeah.
Some amazing celebrities around Grand Rapids, right?
Yeah, I came in on the Paleo chopper.
Yeah,
landed
right on DeVos's helicopter pad.
He lands on mine. He lands on mine.
Oh, man. But, boy, do we have some amazing topics for you guys today. Just to run through a few of them, corpse trafficking, which is something that is unregulated and will blow your mind, this story that we have.
Angela and I were talking about that on the way here, driving here, just saying, I didn't even know. I had no idea that this actually was a market.
Yeah.
In the United States. And if somebody would have told me, just without seeing a story, without seeing it and saying, that looks like a reputable source, if it wasn't that, I don't know if I would believe everything.
It's fantastical, that's for sure.
This is nuts.
Yeah, and it talks about... It's an amazing thing because it talks about regulation. It talks about a deregulated market and just some of the shystery things that goes on. On top of that, we have Obamacare, the repeal and replace, or just repeal and maybe replace later ideas. We're going to be talking about that. Plus, Rand Paul weighs in on that, which is an interesting take.
So we're going to look at it both ways and say, look, here you got in the public debate, in the public sphere, you've got a guy championing the idea of a free market. And on the other side, the idea is saying we need coverage for everybody and we need a single payer option. America wants it in time we have it. So both of these things are being advanced right now in a really passionate way because a lot's on the line.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot on the line with this.
Plenty.
And so with that, we're going to talk about the incident in Chicago. The ongoing, there's going to be stuff coming up about this, but we wanted to touch on it, even if only for a brief time, talk about the person who was abducted, who was kidnapped and tortured, in fact. And just to talk about this and kind of break it down, and to talk about a telescope, and you brought this up, Joe, and this is huge.
Yeah, China's making an amazing telescope. We'll get into the details of that. And if we have extra time, this one might roll over, but U.S. troops have landed in Poland with an actual armory that is something that we want to cover. And the issue of Chelsea Manning with Julian Assange and Edward Snowden all together in one big story. That's pretty impressive. We want to share that with you guys today.
So we'll see. I mean, some of this stuff might be a little bit rapid fire. We're mentioning the bigger stories, though.
These are the big wigs. On top of that, we have our everyday trinkets of fun, like genderless nipples screwing up the algorithm of Instagram.
Yes, and that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Why don't you just begin with that? Because I tell you, man, I saw the picture that you sent, and you're like, we have to talk about this. And I'm looking, and I'm thinking, is that a dude?
That's right.
What is this?
It is indeed a genderless nipple.
It's a genderless nipple. You simply can't tell. And it just blew my mind. And here's what I love, Joe, about our show. I got to say it. It's so much fun. Is that here we are saying, man, we're going to talk about how grandma's body gets, finds its way to the army and blown up. Into chunks everywhere when it wasn't allowed.
Supposed
or we're going to talk about torture in Chicago. But we're also going to talk about genderless nipples. In fact, we're going to start the show off with that. It seems like a good waker-upper for the folks.
It's always a good 1-2 punch to talk about U.S. troops landing in Poland and then talk about nipples right after that.
Right after it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyways, this is from the papermag.com. And the title is, "This Genderless Nipples Account is Throwing Off Instagram's Algorithm." This is by Nadia Agrawi, and this is really interesting. So basically, it's hacktivism here. What someone is doing is trying to purposely mess up Instagram's algorithm of censoring women who show their breasts. And they're basically trying to make that more of a neutral thing than it to be a sexualized thing. So going into the article, they say, throughout Instagram's tenure, it's been flagging photos of nipples, claiming these pictures depict female nudity. A brand new @genderless_nipples Instagram account is here to mess with that as part of the Free the Nipple campaign.
There's got to be a point to this. I can walk around with my breasts. I can walk around my orangutans, my banana peels, walk around in public, and the only embarrassment is on me.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's a thing. And yet, you can, a man, no problemo. I can bounce around on a trampoline.
Yeah, we can do whatever we
like. As
like.
jiggly as I am, I can jump up and down on a trampoline. And people might walk by and go, well, that's just wrong. I don't think he should be doing that. He should maybe put a shirt on. But nobody's going to make a law about it.
That's right.
Nobody's going to call the cops and be like, yo.
No, or report your pictures, right?
Yeah.
So there's something against it. And, hey, this is maybe a newsflash to half the people in our country here, but breasts serve a purpose outside of being a sexualized thing on a woman, right? They serve actually quite a few more purposes than that. So this idea that every time we see breasts in our society, we have to act like we should censor them because they are always being sexual, I think is nonsense. For instance, when women are breastfeeding their children, I see no problem with women doing that in public. In fact, I'm not that guy that watches the goings-on of how women are mothering their children in public very often. I do not care if she's breastfeeding her child in public. I don't see it as a sexual act.
Because it's not.
Because it's not.
I mean, that's the kind of weird thing. I mean, if you sit there and you say, all right, we're going to lay out a bunch of scenarios. Each one of these, we're just going to have a screenshot of what you think is a sexual image, and you're going to have a whole bunch of these things on there, a bunch of these Miley Cyrus images and everything else. And then you're going to have maybe some red tube activity up there, and then you're going to have a woman breastfeeding her child. If you look at that string of pictures and you say, that woman breastfeeding her child, man, that's really sexual.
That's right.
If you say that, I think you kind of are kind of a weirdo.
You're giving away something, aren't you?
You're kind of saying, like, maybe, hey, this is risque to say at 10, 11 in the morning, but, you know, if you're married or it's your lover, it's somebody and maybe even your child, and you're like, hey, man, there's something uniquely attractive about that situation. That's one thing. But to just be like, in general, the concept of every time a woman is feeding a child, that is like, oh, man, I just simply don't know if, A, I can control myself, and B, without a law, I won't control myself.
Yeah, exactly.
That is creepy and weird.
Yes, that is the talk of a psychopath.
Yeah, real weirdo.
But going back into the article, it says, Genderless Nipples posts up pictures of people's nipples, making it unclear if they belong to men or women. This clever strategy completely bamboozles Instagram's algorithm, and it has for nude detection, it says. So sometimes when it deletes pictures off Genderless Nipples' account, it ends up deleting pictures of a dude. This happened within a few days of the account going live. Instagram, in all of its wisdom, deleted a picture of nipples thinking they were lady parts when in fact they belonged to a guy. The account holders responded by posting the notification they received and a caption pointing out the clear double standard that exists, saying, quote, Instagram, you can't even tell the difference between man and female nipples. Who could? So why even bother banning female nipples if they can be so similar? Interesting question.
It's a valid point. I mean, if they're not going to ban it without a face, and then you simply put a face with it, and it's like all of a sudden that right there needs to be either censored or the picture removed. I mean, again,
yes.
What is up with that? I mean, really explain that to me. I don't get this. If to say once we see it, well, why don't you open that picture up more so we can figure out if we should censor you or not?
Exactly. Well,
and censor the nipple.
Instagram's current policy about nudity is clear for the most part. No butts, no genitalia. But when it comes to nipples, the policy changes based on gender. If a woman's nipples are exposed, it's nudity. Male nipples are always permissible. That's odd, which is very true because I had a wardrobe malfunction hiking out of the woods that
you
became
did
a conspiracy on our Twitter account. And I was not censored for such things.
Dude, that's actually a perfect example. Yes, and was it Joe's Nipplegate?
Joe's Nipplegate.
Something like that. We got to go back and look.
That happened.
It was a raging conspiracy. Obviously went viral.
Yeah.
But it was a picture, real thing. We had a picture. It was a red circle, I think, in fact, to draw people's attention, make it crystal clear that, yes, your nip was sticking out from your muscle man cutoff shirt.
Yeah.
You were hiking. Where were you?
I was by Sturgeon Falls up in the UP.
Up in the
Sturgeon
UP.
River. There's a huge canyon. It actually can be a mile wide. They call it Michigan's Grand Canyon.
And for people outside of Michigan, I know it sounds terrible to say, but if you say UP, and some people may not.
Oh, yeah, thank you, yeah.
It's the Upper Peninsula.
The Upper Peninsula,
right? Let's
yes.
throw a bone, because I love the Upper Peninsula, and I'm sympathetic to some of their concerns.
Just think about that. We give Toledo the other half of it, and then we get the whole UP. That's a pretty good trade with Ohio. Thank you.
Yeah,
Tip of the hat, Ohio.
I'll tell you, amazing stories. When we get back, we're going to talk about. Are we going to talk about grandma?
We're going to talk about grandma. We're going to talk about grandma body snatching. This is real stuff, folks. It happens in the United States. It will blow your mind, but stick around. It's going to be fantastic. Paleo Radio.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. Want to remind you guys that we do have, again, the always amazing question of the week.
Yes.
Which is, a historical event began today in America's history. What was it?
Yes.
If you can guess it, you'll get a lot of amazing prizes.
It is, and we can even, should we use the phrase law? Do you think,
we
think
can
law,
use the phrase law.
There's another term that could be used for this, but man, that'd be so specific.
Yeah, we'll just say
it just
law.
would. What law? What law went into effect in the United States on this day in history? It's notorious.
Yes.
It is absolutely notorious. In fact, it may be one of the most notorious laws that the United States has ever done in history, where it was so crazy. Well, I don't want to give more than I need.
And this is in the whole,
I'm not going to go any further than that.
The entirety of the United States history, so it could be one of many, many things.
Yes, and big time controversial law. Very, very, very. So, and plays into a lot of kind of what goes on today. So, but it went into effect on this day, okay, on January 16th in history. So if you have the answer to this, 616-656-1680, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to win. If you call with the right answer, you're going to win a WPRR 95.3 1680 AM magnet for your car or anything magnetic.
Yeah, anything magnetic. It can go on your fridge. It can go on a metal wall. It can go on anything it can stick to. It's amazing.
Highly sensitive reel-to-reels.
Yes, we cannot tell you. We cannot tell you how amazing this magnet is.
You know, people who are old enough might know what I'm talking about with magnetic stuff near reel-to-reels.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's
not good.
It will goof it up.
Right.
Don't put it on your computer screens, right? The 1980s computers.
Yep. So 616-656-1680 if you think you have that fancy answer. But Joe, this story, man, this is nuts.
It is.
This is one of the crazier stories, and I don't even know. After I read it, I kind of was thinking, like, I've got an idea for how I'm postured toward a majority of the controversial laws that we have, right? Or things that are going on in the United States, even down to some real weird stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I'm aware of different things in life, different groups. But this, man.
Yeah, this is something else. This is a Reuters article entitled, How the Body of an Arizona Great-Grandmother Ended Up as Part of a U.S. Army Blast Test. And this is real stuff here. It's by John Schiffman. And the body in question is the body of Doris Stauffer, and her body would be used to study Alzheimer's, is what they were told, or her family was told. And this is the story of how she became the subject of a Pentagon experiment and how it casts a spotlight on a growing and unregulated industry, human body brokers. So this is just, it's unreal.
Yeah, the human body brokers. And just as people are listening to this, it's one thing to be like, wow, I can't believe that they're talking about cadavers this way. Think about your loved ones. Think about your own self. Right? I mean, seriously, think about some kind of an advanced directive that you've got that you say, I want this to be done to me. And your family follows through with your wishes. And your family thinks everything's fine. And then they find out through some investigation that they weren't even aware of. Somebody said, hey, I saw something real weird. Or I heard some rumblings. So I went and did an investigation. And they find a bunch of evidence, then go to the family and say, I have something about Grandma.
Yeah. So this story entails Jim Stauffer and also Doris Stauffer, who is the body in question again. And his mother, Doris, passed away at the age of 74 because of Alzheimer's disease. And at a nurse's suggestion, the family contacted the Biological Resource Center, a local company that brokered donations of human bodies, and they do it for research. Within the hour, BRC had dispatched a driver to collect Doris. Jim signed a form authorizing medical research on his mother's body. He also checked a box prohibiting military, traffic safety, and other non-medical experiments. And 10 days later, he receives his mother's cremated remains. So 10 days after signing this, he gets an urn back with cremated remains in it. And that's basically what he's told. That's what her body was used for, yada, yada. Well, records that are reviewed by Reuters show that the BRC workers had detached one of Doris Stauffer's hands for cremation and sent that to Jim. Mm-hmm. After sending those ashes back to her son, the company sold and shipped the rest of Stauffer's body to a taxpayer-funded research project for the U.S. Army.
That's neat.
Just
think about it. And we're not even to the point where it says what the Army did. Just think about it.
Just let that sink in, that she was supposed to have her entire body donated for Alzheimer's, which obviously you would think would be her brain, right? What BRC does is cut off her hand, cremate that, send it back, and then use the rest of her body for an experiment that he explicitly wrote her body should not be used for, which is military experiments. Blows your mind.
Yeah, and that when they went in and they started looking at military records, it showed that at least 20 other bodies were also used in the blast experiments. So, I mean, it's not even the entirety of their experimentation. We're just talking the blast experimentation that was going on.
Yes.
Yeah, so at least 20 other bodies were used without permission. So more bodies than that, but without permission of the donors or their relatives, which is a violation, by the way, of U.S. Army policy as well.
Absolutely.
And BRC sold donated bodies like Stauffer's for $5,893.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
So to be absolutely clear, Doris Stauffer passes away. Her son signs off that her body can be used for medical research, particularly for Alzheimer's, signs a disclaimer that says her body should not be used for military experiments. The group that collects her body cuts her hand off, cremates it, sends it back to him, sells her body for $5,000, and then Doris Stauffer's body was used by the Army in an experiment to measure damage caused by roadside bombs. So she was in an IED experiment.
Yes. And listen, I was thinking about it, and it's a hard place to go to even think about what, and I don't want to get too graphic with descriptions of it. And in fact, I want to use a comparison that I thought of that would be okay to talk about, and that gives enough information that anything beyond that's like, whoa, man, these are real people. The movie UHF. I know this is a weird thing to say. It's strange, right?
Yeah.
But UHF,
yeah.
The movie with Weird Al Yankovic.
Yes.
There's a scene where he's Rambo, and he's got a gun, and he's pointing at a guy across from him who's the owner of the terrible news station. He's the big tycoon of the other station in town, and he's got a machine gun, and he's shooting at Rambo, and Rambo's getting closer and closer with a crossbow. That's how it goes. Rambo's got this big crossbow, bow and arrow thing, and he's going up toward him, and he's getting shot at, and they're real close. Finally, when the screen pulls away, they're actually feet away from each other, right?
Yes.
That's the whole joke. And he pulls back his bow and arrow and launches it right at the dude's body. The guy explodes. It's obviously a mannequin. It's obviously big, huge chunks of rubber.
Yeah.
And you can see it fly in all these different directions. That is all that should be said. Right?
Yes.
Is that when we're talking about real cadavers and not rubber bodies, and you think about explosions and what that is, it's the first thing I thought of. And I said, but the difference is these have bones, real bones. These are real people. This has flesh.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe this, but the BRC, believe it or not, is no longer in business, right?
Yeah.
Army officials that were involved in the project said they never received the consent forms from the donors or their families that had been signed. Rather, the officials said they relied on assurances from the BRC that families had agreed to let the bodies be used in such experiments. BRC, which has sold more than 20,000 human body parts in some 5,000 human bodies overall in a decade, is no longer in business. Its former owner, Stephen Gore, pled guilty to fraud last year. In a statement to Reuters, Gore said that he had always tried to honor the wishes of donors and sent consent forms when researchers requested them. So basically, if researchers requested the consent forms,
then
they would back it up. Otherwise, they were just, wheeling and dealing
bodies.
These are human bodies.
Yeah, and to be used in a Pentagon experiment, and how it shines a spotlight on a growing but little-known industry, the trade in human cadavers and body parts. The remainder of the story isn't so much talking about specific instances, and we're going to get into this because it's talking about the debate and whether or not certain things can even be accomplished in science if we don't have some kind of a market for cadavers.
Yes. Well, we need to have a market for cadavers, but we need to have people. This always goes back to every business venture that anyone gets into. If people don't honor the agreements, it doesn't work. And people need to honor the agreements that are signed, which is if their body's not going to be used for military experiment, then it's not. If it's going to be used for Alzheimer's, to be used for Alzheimer's. Look, I'm an organ donor, so I have truck with this. I want my organs to go to the right places. Want them to go where I have consigned them to go, or to be used the way I would like them to be used after I'm dead. That matters to me. And I think it matters to everybody. But this idea of being able to just pick and choose when you when you accept a deal or not is just crazy. It's crazy talk.
It's totally crazy. And I'll tell you what else is going to be crazy, Joe, is during the second hour, we're going to interview Justin Schieber. I'm right now, this is nuts, I'm holding the book.
Yes.
An atheist and a Christian walk into a bar talking about God, the universe, and everything by Randall Rouser and Justin Schieber. We've got the latter half on the show in the second hour. Don't go anywhere.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
All right, Joe. I'm so pumped about the Schieber deal. Schieber came in. He's here in the studio right now. Justin Schieber from Real Atheology. He's over in the call room with Angela. If you want to connect with them, hey, give us a call. 616-656-1680. But he came in and brought up some interesting things, and I'm hoping that he's going to bring them up when he comes in, even as a side note, as an asterisk, to do with the respect of the wishes of the dead.
Yeah.
And he has, of course, a philosophical there's a debate to be had, right? There's a good discussion to be had. And so we're pumped about that. That's going to be in the second hour, so you're not going to want to go anywhere. But we have a question of the day that before we move on and talk about the repeal and replace of Obamacare, to refer back to our question of the day. And, I am going to give a hint, Joe. I think we should.
Fire away.
Fire away. It's an amendment.
Yes, it is an amendment.
It's an amendment.
It's an amendment, and this is the day it began, not the day that it was amended and voted on. It's the day that it occurred, it began. Yeah,
the day it began, this day in history, January 16th, it's an amendment, okay? It's notorious. It's in the United States. The number is 616-656-1680 if you have the right answer. And we ask that you don't cheat, of course. We're hoping that our listeners have this off the top of their heads. A bunch of geniuses listen to the show. 616-656-1680. And you could win a WPRR 95.3 FM, 1680 AM magnet.
Yes, a very lovely magnet. And as we talk about, that magnet is very, very attractive. And we've said this before. It doesn't matter who you're attracted to or who's attracted to you. Whoever you want to be attracted to you will be if you have that magnet.
We've been, you and I think both of us are big on health care for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And we have been for years. This is something that even as a conservative, to sit there and say there's conservative arguments to be made for that. In fact, conservatives in Europe, almost unanimously, right? They understand how it saves them money and how it plays into even their models of what conservatism is or traditionalism is, that it's not something that you must be of one party in order to believe and in order to advance. And I remember being on the radio, and you were too. We both were independently, apart from one another, talking about Obamacare.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were there for the debates around that. And I know, speaking for myself, I know I was frustrated because I felt that there was momentum in this country for single payer. And that was kind of, along with Obama, that whole concept of this change and this hope that it was things that were real big and yet were wanted by America and wanted by the people, that they would not only content themselves, but they desired to have that. And so I thought this would happen. It transformed into something that was, and people, I've heard compelling arguments to say this is really one of the only ways it could get passed, even if only incrementally.
I agree with that.
I've heard compelling arguments like this.
Yes.
Well, we're at a place where if that's true and we're now in incremental thing, that incremental movement could be thrown wildly back.
Absolutely,
and there could be regression. There will at least be a time, unquestionably, during transition where a lot of people are going to go from having health care to having none.
Almost 20 million of them by the numbers.
By the numbers.
Yes.
And so the debate over repeal, which for how long, man? It's just been since day one. For the Republicans, it has been about repeal. They've had a long time to craft something that would be a replacement system.
It's been repeal since Obamacare has been promoted, but I think the story begins even earlier when for the 20 years before that, Republicans still didn't have a solution. When asked the question, what do you do with X amount of people that are American citizens that cannot get health care because of pre-existing conditions? For 20 years, they were told what? We don't have a plan. There's not a plan. You just have to get insurance through your employer. Work and get your good bennies. There has never been a replacement plan.
But we're seeing that shift though.
We're seeing that
where they're admitting now that they're in power. Right now that they're in power, and now that it's like, well, we've been saying we're going to get rid of this, and now we are. Holy moly, this is a big deal, and look at the fallout and the difficulties of implementing it that took place, and the troubles that were caused by not jumping in and saying, let's work with the national government in order to make this marketplace work smoothly. And you had all of this resistance. The idea that you're not going to have that now, and that same anger and even more is going to be thrust at you now.
Yes.
Right? That I think they're shaking in their boots a little bit. I know that Trump has said that he's got a plan and that they're going to reveal it. In fact, was it today or this week?
Yeah,
I think,
he said it, and he said it's going to be health. Everyone's going to get health care.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. But
what's he going to – my question is, what is he going to come up with that is different than what we have? For instance – people don't understand what the Affordable Care Act is. What is it in its most basic form? What is it? Well, it's a way of forcing private insurance companies to still get a cut of the pie while making them take on people with pre-existing conditions. It's almost entirely what it is. The whole push for what the Affordable Care Act has been is just to try to get private insurance companies to be willing to take people with pre-existing conditions and actually insure them, knowing that it's likely that they will pass away or that if they don't get the right medicine, that they're screwed. And those insurance companies previously would not do it. Now, this is Obamacare. In Obama, I think what he did was he looked at the way that it's working, the way that it is in the entire country, and he said, how am I going to allow private insurance companies to still get a big dig in this? Because if I make it single payer, they will have no incentive to work with me. So how do I give them incentive? I give them huge, large pools of the American people and say you can have access to these huge pools and bid for your insurance company, and that will raise costs for you. You can do that in exchange for taking on the 20 million people that have to come on. And I can't stress this enough. That will cost something. We're not going to take on 20 million people and not have it cost something.
Right.
The question is, are we okay with it costing the amount that it costs? I personally, and I know I can only speak for myself, but I know how much I make and I know how much I have to pay into Obamacare for this crazy socialist system of helping kids with broken arms get it fixed. I'm okay with what it has me pay. And I pay a kind of high rate for being a single guy. But I'm okay with that. So I think a lot of people after having it are. But
there's a lot of people, it presupposes that you're someone who's got money. And the idea that there's a lot of these people that are benefiting from Obamacare where they're giving money and assistance, for example. That's another thing that's plugged into this, that if you don't have the money for it. In fact, there's a commercial that plays all the time. I've been watching Son of Zorn. I think it's it's a fascinating show. You have to kind of make it first through the pilot and the second episode until it kind of gets in its.
Then it gets real good.
It gets real good.
Hits its track.
It does, But there's these commercials for Obamacare, and talking about the marketplace and talking about the deals that are there, and it talks about how much you need to pay in order to avoid the penalty. And they put it as a penalty. It is a tax, and this is actually a tax. This is also part of the debate, is that this is what it ended up having to be in order to be okay. And so I know that there are people who look at the numbers, and I have some friends who look at the numbers, and they're not happy with Obamacare, but at the same time, they actually have insurance. And they say that. That's what they say. It's kind of like with me with the VA. I say the same thing. I say, man, I'm upset at the care. I'm upset at how long it takes. I'm upset at the waits. I'm upset at the drives I have to do. But in the end of the day, I do have a place I can go. Yeah. And with this repeal idea, if we don't have something to replace it, to assure that people are going to be able to have access to it, we're going to have a real problem. And the other thing, and I love that you brought that up, Joe, is that it's going to cost. Like, there's this idea, because people wanted it to be more a single payer, where it would offset it differently. They wanted that. Yeah. That once they felt the cost of what it would be if we went a different route, they say, I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like the way this hits me. I want it. Let's do it a different way. And I think that's more incentive, in fact, to allow incremental change to go toward single payer than to pull it back to a place of a more deregulated, completely let's just allow people to buy what they can buy.
Well, and when we go back into allowing the employer to control your health care, which is what Obamacare helps too, is there are people that were working jobs entirely just for the benefits that now don't have to work those jobs and can be doing some other things. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, that group is a small group. More importantly, what Obamacare does for everybody is it helps people that have children that could go into bankruptcy if their kid gets pneumonia because they have to go directly to the ER. Now those people actually don't go broke doing it. And yes, that cost gets offset by other people that have a family of 4 that make $120,000 and have 2 cars and a bedroom for each kid. And yes, I'm sorry, that will make you pay maybe $100 more a month. And listen, I can't help but just say, sorry. It's going to cost a little more, but think about what you're doing. What's the ramifications of that? You get 20 million people without insurance on insurance. It's to me, and I know this is the lofty liberal in me, but we're first world country. How in the world can we figure that we're going to have our employers control our health care and dictate it, and we can't use a government system to manage our finances, especially with our health care? It's just, to me, it's kind of asinine.
What do you think of because this is part of the debate, and it's because of the way power is right now, it holds more sway maybe than we'd even want. But what do you think of the 4 propositions put forward by Rand Paul in the USA Today? He says this. Yeah. What should we replace Obamacare with? Perhaps we should try freedom, number 1. The freedom to choose inexpensive insurance free of government dictates. So that's not going to necessarily get more people covered.
Yeah, it's idealistic.
That's just, yeah. Number 2, the freedom to save unlimited amounts in a health savings account.
I think that would be a good idea.
That should be, I'm not bad with that. Mm-hmm. The freedom to buy insurance across state lines.
That one I've been for a long time. When Obamacare came through, I was actually against it for that reason, where I said this would be an easier system if you allowed people to get insurance across state lines and they couldn't basically rig the marketplaces the same way that Verizon and AT&T do for your cable access. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't choose between cable providers for a reason. They've mapped it out like gangbusters and decided which areas you pay for and which areas you don't. Insurance companies did the same thing. Rand Paul's onto something there about going across state lines.
And then number 4, the freedom for all individuals to join together in voluntary associations to gain the leverage of being part of a large insurance pool.
That could be done through a government system too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm okay with it, but I think you could do that. What if people voluntarily would want to work within a government system? Like, in a libertarian sense, what if people voluntarily wanted that? Would it then be okay, is the question. I know that's kind of gets a little philosophical, but the question is, it's all about volunteerism, and if you're openly for it, what if people said, I'm openly okay with contributing towards a single-payer government healthcare system?
As a public option.
As a public option.
Yeah. And I thought this is interesting, worthy of debate. Removing the mandate, and this is Rand Paul again, removing the mandate to buy insurance while leaving in place the dictate that people can wait to buy insurance until after they are ill will only accentuate the bankrupting of the insurance industry. My fear is that if you leave part of Obamacare in place, the dictate that insurance companies must sell insurance to individuals with pre-existing conditions, then you will see an acceleration of adverse selection and ultimately mass bankruptcy of the healthcare insurance industry.
You already have that when people don't have insurance. Mass bankruptcies happen when there is no insurance for people to get on. So if that's the threat of what could happen, you're already willing to take that chance the other way, and to say, well, people will suffer from mass bankruptcies if they don't have health insurance and there is no single payer system and there's nothing to replace it. But
he's warning of a bailout.
Yeah, he's warning of a bailout. Which, hey, look, I think that healthcare is expensive. If we don't tackle pharmaceutical industry problems along with this, it will be the same thing. Bernie Sanders had an interesting thing. It was a healthcare debate, and he was talking about them trying to cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. But at the very end, they were talking about Big Pharma, and he proposed to have us be able to buy medicine from Canada. He just proposed it and said, what about the American people being able to purchase it from Canada? And that was kind of ho-hummed. But if you think about that, we are not even allowed to import drugs from other countries right now. That's a humongous gain that makes all of our health insurance go up. So it's got to be a two-pronged attack.
We'd love to hear your opinion. 616-656-1680. Also, question of the day. You can win a magnet. What amendment went into effect on this day in history? We'll be right back.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. Again, question of the day, what amendment went into effect today? A historical amendment in American history. 616-656-1680.
All right, let's go right now to the phones. We've got a guy named Richard listening in Grand Rapids on FM. Wants to talk about health care. Welcome to Paleo Radio, Richard.
Hi. Can you repeat what you just said?
I just introduced you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I was listening to you guys, and I think you are missing one component of cost in regards to healthcare for people with pre-existing conditions, which is that due to lack of treatment, if they don't have insurance, then their condition gets worse and worse, and inevitably they end up in at the ER. So that brings in cost for the hospitals.
Yes.
And they have, because the hospitals are businesses, they have to transfer that cost to patients. So we all end up paying more because of that.
Yes. Which
okay,
is,
so
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That
Go ahead, Richard.
does not disappear.
No, which is what we were talking about, where we were saying if you go off of, if the Affordable Care Act was to be repealed, if there's nothing to replace it, that would eventually lead people to the ER, and that's where I was saying with Rand Paul talking about having an indebted system, that's what you have without the Affordable Care Act, is you have people that go into debt for basic health care needs.
Yeah, but I think I heard you guys saying that this has to be about compassion or something like that, or solidarity or something like that, which is in part true. But as a practical matter, there's a hidden cost, which is not obvious to people.
Yes, well,
okay?
yeah.
That's why I thought I would comment on
Sure.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay? So
Yes.
that's all I have.
Oh, yes, thank you very much for the phone call.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks.
Yeah, 616-656-1680 if you'd like to join the conversation. We want to thank Richard for that phone call. And, I was trying to actually bring that up by saying that we're seeing hidden costs with the increase in premiums. We're seeing the fact that you can't keep it low. There is an adjustment that's going to go with that. And if they're taking on people and it's costing more, eventually it's going to cost you more.
Yes.
I mean, that's just the way, and especially if the pool of competition is limited, you're going to have also a more difficult time, or at least have more regulations in place to keep it from getting too expensive.
Yeah. Well, and this is maybe changing gears a little bit, but I do see the slippery slope of allowing everyone to have a single-payer health care. And I know maybe this is people going, oh, you're talking out of two sides of your mouth, but I think what you do is you weigh both of the options. One thing that could be a slippery slope is we have a massive problem with obesity in our country. And if we are paying for people's health care, then it's not a far cry away to start regulating people's diets. And I know people laugh at that, but it really isn't. To say, hey, if our healthcare costs are getting just completely immersed with healthcare issues, particularly based on people's diets, how long will it go before the government starts saying we should not allow people to have more than X amount of red meat in a week because it's going to affect their health in a way that we end up paying for? And it becomes an interesting question about where people's rights about their own sovereignty and their own body begin and end.
Speaking about something that's going to be healthy for you with a bunch of benefits, in about 15 minutes we're going to interview Justin Schieber of Real Atheology. It's good for your mind, some good mental floss.
That's right.
He's always a bunch of fun, and I have not been in a studio with him in a long time. I mean, it's been years, I think. I don't think that we've been in a studio together face-to-face for a while. He was here with Ed Brayton when Sammy was going through kind of her final month of life. And they came here and they were interviewed and had a fun time, but I wasn't here. And so it's going to be a bunch of fun. But before we interview Schieber, we wanted to talk about something that's actually kind of a timely issue.
Very timely.
It's and by
it's
kind
been like
of
4
I mean,
days.
Yeah, like a really big deal. And it's an article by Mark Pigott over at IB Times UK, and it's called "Edward Snowden Pleads with Obama, Free Chelsea Manning to Save Her Life. WikiLeaks, Julian Assange will turn himself in to U.S. authorities if Chelsea Manning is freed." President Obama has 9 days to order the release, and this is obviously not 9 days anymore.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, now we were down to 4.
Yeah, we're down to 4. Okay, so he's got 4 days to release imprisoned Chelsea Manning and possibly save her life, and this is according to Edward Snowden. Manning, who, like Snowden, leaked U.S. state secrets and is 6 years into a 35-year sentence, pled with Obama to grant Chelsea clemency before Obama leaves office on 20th of January.
Yes.
So, and they're hoping, that their fear is that Donald Trump will be less sympathetic.
Which I think is a fair assessment.
Right. He's surrounding himself with generals who would be very unsympathetic to that particular cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it said that Chelsea Manning was high on his list as somebody who he was thinking about possibly giving the pardon to. So, or releasing at least.
Yeah, not Snowden, though.
Not Snowden.
No.
No.
In fact, there was an audio. No. I think it was an audio or a video that was released where it sounded like there's a possibility about Chelsea Manning. And, Manning, this is a difficult situation. I mean, according to the article, Manning, who is awaiting gender realignment, has already attempted suicide twice in prison and has been on a hunger strike. In fact, I think still now.
And is in solitary confinement for
a
6
long
years,
time.
with some really odd behavior being done to her.
People need to know about this. And I talked about it when it was first going on. I know you talked about it when it was first going on. You talked about it on Southpaws. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've talked much about Chelsea Manning. I think we've made mention a couple times, but this is actually a big deal. While people, including ourselves, have not been focusing too much time on the issue, Chelsea Manning has been in solitary confinement. Yeah. In the weirdest conditions. I mean, where being naked on the ground, light, sleep deprivation,
very demeaning
yes. stuff. I mean, really, if you read it, you would say that's like Abu Ghraib. I mean, this is like a weird kind of psyop-y sounding thing.
When people talk about sleep deprivation, too, just for a moment, I don't think people can really grasp what they're talking about, which is, to give an idea, they say that the effects of sleep deprivation, they can get people to feel disoriented and not know what day or what time it is within an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. That they put them in a room that's enclosed with no sometimes flaring lights and sounds, but with no clocks. And what they do is when the person falls asleep, sometimes they let them sleep an hour, sometimes they let them sleep for 2 minutes, sometimes they let them sleep for 15. And they cycle these times on the person. So as they're waking up, they don't know what time they're waking up. They don't know if they've slept for an hour or 8 hours or 6 hours. And they do it in different times, and they adjust those times. So you never get a cycle, a full REM sleep cycle. And on top of that, you never know what time it is. Some people will think it's gone on for weeks when it's only gone on for hours.
You know how deranged that is?
Yeah, and think about that for 6 years.
Yeah, for 6 years. And listen, it would be one thing. I mean, it wouldn't even work. It wouldn't even fly with me if they were like, listen, this person might have intimate information on a nuclear bomb. We need to torture this person to get that information. I'd be like, dude, there's a lot of studies about that.
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
You're going to get a lot of false information from that.
But this is a person serving a sentence. This isn't, hey man, we're trying to get information from you. These are sickos. These are real sickos.
Real sickos.
Yeah.
And whenever someone does that, whenever they ask those questions about torture, and they say, well, they have this information that we need, I always ask them, how many people that confessed in the 1600s of being witches do you think were witches? There's a lot of confessions. Lots of them.
And they're not even trying to get a confession out of Snowden.
No.
I mean, out of Manning.
Out of Manning, you're right. They're not.
They're not.
No.
And so this is simply, what is the end game of that? What is it that's trying to be accomplished to do this? That's like, hey, we know these techniques work. How do you know those techniques work? That's actually, and listen, I mean, there's a business for everybody. But you say, who came up with these schemes and said, hey, this is what we should do to prisoners?
Yeah.
I mean, those people are there. I'd like to know them maybe a little bit more by name, get a little bit more intimate with who's coming up with this kind of program for people who are in prison.
Well, it's sick. It's sickening. I think one interesting thing to the article, though, is what Julian Assange said, which is that if they give Manning clemency, that he would turn himself in. What do you think about that?
I think it's really interesting, and I think he'd stand by it. I think he would. I think he probably would. And the article says WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London to avoid being tried in Sweden on sex charges, which that's actually not true at all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, total fabrication.
That's fake news. Added his voice to calls for Manning's release. Assange offered to take Manning's place in the U.S. justice system if Obama agreed to release Manning. I mean, look, it's kind of a weird thing to offer. I don't know how much precedent there is to, hey, this person, apart from maybe Jesus, right, being this substitutionary figure that says, I'll take the heat for that. Yeah. And so it's kind of an interesting thing he's willing to do. But he's basically saying he's willing to be tortured.
Yeah,
he's willing to be put into solitary confinement, willing to be tortured.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, and going to the place that he actually most fears. That's why he's not going back, by the way, to Sweden. Because Sweden, there's no sex charges. Those aren't even there, right? There's no such thing as that. They're going to bring him to the United States.
Yeah, they would bring him to the U.S.
Yes.
Manning sent a petition to Obama in November of 2016, and to date it has been signed by over 100,000 supporters. But with time running out before President Obama leaves office, she's losing hope. Manning told The Guardian that Obama's clemency was, quote, the last real chance to make my case to go home for a very long time. Stick around, folks. At the top of the hour, we're going to have Justin Schieber. We're going to be talking about his new book. It's going to be fantastic. We will see you on the other side of the hour. Stick around.
It's time for Paleo Radio, only on Secular Media Network.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
We're back already, my friends.
So fast.
Yeah, as I said, we always go out, do a quick high five, twirl around 3 times, run back in, and do this announcement. You're listening to Paleo Radio. I'm Jeremiah Bannister.
And I am Joe Elder.
Yep, you're listening to 95.3 FM if you're local. If you're in Grand Rapids and you're tuned in on the radio, and we hope you are. We hope you just got it cranked up at work.
That's right.
We really do.
Playing it at work.
Playing it at work.
Being a rebel.
Let all your friends know that we're on from 10 to noon. It's a whole bunch of fun, and we know the competition around here.
Yeah,
right?
we've seen the score.
We've seen it, and not impressive at all. So, okay. All right. Men from Venus, and we're going to just real quickly have a kind of a short discussion as we're getting things lined up for Justin Schieber of Real Atheology. He's now officially, with all the Shekinah glory surrounding him, inside the studio here with us, and so we're setting him up. All right. This piece is Men Reveal What Hobbies They Do If They Weren't So Womanly. I thought it was an interesting one, and we would love to hear what you have to say. What if something wasn't quote unquote womanly in society, and that if you didn't feel that it was womanly, what would you do? You know, and is by Joshua Bari over at the Mirror.
What an interesting article.
Yeah, he says, "Are you a man? Do you knit? Some men wish they could knit, but don't, because the pastime is quote unquote too feminine. Apparently, macho lads have posted to Reddit some of their innermost desires, hobbies that they wish they could undertake, but don't, for fear of society's cruel eyes. The thing is, despite progress, a portion of the male population is still concerned with stereotypes, and the idea of masculinity. Gender still defines roles for many people. And so, just going through some of these, I thought it was so cool to think, for example, yoga pants. Like
How
yoga
many men
pants.
would rock
That's
some
daring.
yoga pants?
That's a daring thing.
Oh, yeah.
Schieber might rock yoga pants.
That's a bold move.
Maybe. We'll ask Schieber about that. When he comes in, we'll ask him what he does. All right, fleece-lined leggings.
Yes. These were the things that were high on the list for men that wanted to would rock them if they weren't considered so feminine.
Yeah, if it wasn't considered so feminine, fleece-lined leggings and yoga pants would be something that they would wear.
Hey.
And hey, apparently there are some guys that after trying them on, they were giving their experience and saying how much they loved the feel of the leggings and how it's really comfy and cozy at night.
Hey, I could go for some jeggings. You know, the jean leggings, those, I'd rock those. I'd rock some jeggings.
You know, what were
really
those shorts? I mean, I wore jams as a kid. I mean, that's pretty close.
Yeah,
I mean,
there you go.
Remember the jam pants?
Yeah.
And
jorts. Can't forget jean shorts, man. Those things were alive and well growing up.
Jorts, Zubaz, workout pants. All right, so grooming.
Bugle boys.
We're right back in masculinity.
There
Grooming. Men wish they could smell nice and pretty.
Well, yes.
I do.
Of course.
I'll every once in a while, my wife can attest to this. I'll wear some of her perfume.
There you go.
It's true. It smells amazing. I get compliments all the time.
Well, that's I guess my question too is you know, and not like someone's not it's not like they're going anti-conformity too far to just have some perfume, but there are a lot of nice scents that are for men that you can smell good and be a guy with masculine scents still. I mean,
and you can use what is it? Love Rocks. I think it's Love Rocks. It's by Victoria's Secret.
Free plug, Victoria.
It's true. I wear it every once in a while. I also wear patchouli, though, so I like smelling like I rolled in dirt after a Grateful Dead concert.
Oh, there you go.
So
yeah,
I do that
lovely.
every once in a while. So, all right, grooming. But face masks for soft skin. And I would add probably the pedicures, manicures, pedicures, things like that. I know men who get them. I would love to try it sometime. I've never done it. I'd kind of like to pull a Squidward from SpongeBob where I go ahead and get that, and I'm eating a bonbon, the little flower, bathrobe. It seems like a fun thing. Wearing nail polish. Have you ever worn nail polish, Joe?
Oh yeah, I have 3 older sisters, man. I got dressed up whether I wanted to or not when I was younger.
I was in the Christian punk scene, so I had all sorts of problems. And the black lipstick, green hair.
Yes.
I did. That was my life. All right, crafts.
Pumpkin for Jesus.
Knitting and quilting. What do you think?
I would love. I don't see why people can't. Now, this is one of those conversations where some gender norms just should be shattered, and I think men should knit. I would love. My sister knits, and I would love to have her talent. She's amazing at it. Your wife knits. Angela is an amazing. She can knit like crazy. She's made some really cool things for me. Hand gloves. This is another free plug. The amazing talents of Angela Bannister. But she can seriously knit. I wish I could knit like that.
Yeah, you actually have a pair of those cozies.
Yeah.
And you have your sister. Is it your sister that also knits as well?
Yes, yep. She sends me hats and everything.
Got a fantastic hat. And so Angela put together a very, very nice, what is it, 13-foot long? I think it's about 13-foot long scarf. Yeah. It's the Doctor Who scarf that she made. We actually have two of them, one that she made and one that someone from Make-A-Wish made. And so definitely awesome talents. And you just don't see too many guys. I mean, and it's kind of funny to imagine the little John, the guy that's like 6'4", 300-pound jolly dude with a massive beard knitting.
Yes.
And I know culturally that's kind of a funny thing, but man, I'd love Little John's knitted scarves. Like, why don't you knit Little John? I want your scarves and your mittens.
And there's just something funny. It's kind of like Mr. Incredible seeing a huge person in a little car. There's something about a big man doing a dainty thing that's pretty cool. It's pretty funny.
Big man doing a dainty thing. Justin Schieber's here, and he's going to be talking with us about his book. He sat down, he crunched it out, he braved it, man. And I'll tell you, I've been following your work since 2011. And I've gone online and said I think you're one of the most original thinkers in the secular community and that you're a bright rising star. Obviously, I helped and Joe helped you to get where you are. So we want you to always remember us when you're a millionaire. But we're excited that you wrote a book. And it is an atheist and a Christian walk into a bar. But before, let me do him justice, okay? Justin Schieber is the former co-host of the Reasonable Doubts radio show and podcast, and current host of the Real Atheology YouTube channel. I encourage you to go check it out at realatheology.com, where he produces informational videos on contemporary academic philosophy of religion. Justin has lectured on the philosophical arguments for and against the existence of God and has participated in many public debates throughout the United States and Canada. December 2016 saw the publication of An Atheist and a Christian Walk into a Bar, a conventional exploration on the merits of theism, co-authored with Canadian theologian Randall Rouser and published through Prometheus Books. And it looks like a bunch of fun. I'm looking at the cover of this thing, blue. I got a soft cover. You lowballed me, Justin. I was wanting I was wanting a hard cover. But An Atheist and a Christian Walk into a Bar, talking about God, the universe, and everything. And it's got two chairs, two of these stools next to each other, and it's got a bunch of people on the back, including our friend Ed Brayton and Dan. Is it Finca?
Finca, yes.
Finca, yes, Dan Finca. And so he's the founder and primary writer of the philosophy blog Camels with Hammers. So I encourage you to go check out the book. He's actually going to be talking about it as well, not just today, but he's going to be doing a little presentation on it. I might join him in the readings back and forth, where I would be reading the theological portion from Rouser, and he would be reading his own. And that's going to be on Sunday. But tell us a little bit about Randall Rouser and your meeting with him, because you guys are friends now. Like this is a story that's not just between two random people. They didn't go scouting and say, hey, here's a good atheist and here's a good theologian. They don't really have to know each other at all. You guys actually met. You've debated, you have formed a friendship, and you put this together. Lead us through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I've been, doing this kind of online atheism philosophy thing for a number of years now. And in doing that, I've come across Randall Rouser, who runs a blog at randallrouser.com, on which he discusses different issues within philosophy of religion. And so we've interacted in the past, right? We've interacted to such a degree that there have been people in different student groups in Canada that have since flown me out to do debates with Randall. And when I was up there, I think in the beginning of 2015, I want to say, or 2016, I'm forgetting exactly when it was, but the point being, we had a debate, and it was a really successful event. We had a great exchange. And we also then the next night had a kind of conversation at his seminary that he teaches at. And so these two events, given their success, a few months later, Randall kind of floated the idea of taking this to the next level and kind of making a full book out of it, out of a kind of conversational approach to these questions. And so, of course, I was on board. And so for the past year and a half or so, we've been working on this book, kind of going back and forth over Google Docs. And I live in Grand Rapids. He lives in Edmonton, Alberta. So we don't meet regularly, but, we converse regularly online. So
Yeah, that is really impressive. I know that it's one thing, too, where in these trying times, I guess you would say, it's fairly uncommon that we're even seeing kind of the bipartisanship of atheists conversing with Christians in a way that produces some real productive dialogue. And I think in your book, I can't wait to read it, but I'm really looking forward to diving into that and seeing some seriously productive dialogue. But what I wanted to ask you was, you guys go into many different things into the book. Mm-hmm. One is just why it's still important to have debates about the existence of God. Without giving too much, would you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is one of the first things we address. If you're going to write a book about the God question, a topic that has been kind of beaten across the head for millennia now, why do it? Why spend time on this? And so one of the key questions you want to ask is, what's so important about the question? Both Randall and I think it's a very important question because it's whether or not God exists, that fact of the matter bleeds into every part of human life. And so because of that, it's a huge kind of foundational question to have right. It's an important thing to get right. Now, obviously, I'm an atheist. Randall is a Christian, so he's a theist. We disagree on this, but we both agree that the question is at least important. So that's a good kind of common starting point from which to jump off into a larger conversation.
I'm fascinated by this because as you know, and our listeners here know, I went to school for apologetics, and I've engaged in many debates. In fact, that's kind of how you and I stumbled on each other a little bit. I think you were asking if we'd be willing to debate, and I said we actually have more in common than you think now. And I think that's how it originally worked out. But it's true. And so, because I used to be somebody who would love to have debated you, and maybe even I'd still.
It
love
was just a few months before you moved to Grand Rapids, I believe.
It's true.
I messaged you because I found your old YouTube.
The
stuff.
old YouTube, YouTube treasure trove, right?
Hey, Mr. Bannister,
Yeah.
you're in Michigan. We should set up a fun debate event. And you're like, well, you might be a bit too late.
Yeah, a little bit. And so, but in my experience, I started to get really down on the whole endeavor and kind of started taking a more pessimistic view, even as a Christian back then, of the efficiency of it all and really where is it going? Is
pessimistic view as in you're unlikely to change people's minds?
Unlike that even in the overall compared to other things.
That it's just not important.
That it's not that it's unimportant, but that there's not as much bang for the buck as there used to be in a day and age where you'd have two pundits and apologists get up and
have
go
a battle
against each other.
Okay, I see.
And so in your experience, why for your first book, was it just simply that's just the way it worked out, or do you see that this book's a little bit different and stands out from maybe other books on this subject in that it's conversational, in that it's a friendship, and that it took time and you sent stuff to each other in that way? What makes this book kind of set apart from others?
Yeah, so perhaps it comes out of the observation that you just made, in that it seems that a lot of the stuff being, ever since like the, Dawkins and Hitchens and the Four Horsemen have come out with their books, it seems that a lot of it's been mostly polemic and rather superficial treatments of the philosophical issues involved. And perhaps as a response to that, I'm a person who really just gets turned on by philosophy generally, and so this is something that, this is the style in which I wanted to address that question. And so it's much more interesting that way, and maybe that's what sets it apart from more recent texts on both sides. You have apologetic texts on both sides, right? Oh, this is why atheism is true. Theists are stupid, and then on the other side you have, this is why Christian theism is true and all atheists are stupid or evil or something, right? There's a place to meet in the middle. Randall actually wrote an entire book about misrepresentations of atheists. He wrote an entire book about the arguments that people give to justify atheistic or bigotry against atheists. So I knew right away that Randall's going to be someone who's going to be able to meet me on common ground and to actually discuss these questions philosophically rather than assuming some flaw in my moral character.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff, Justin. We're going to continue with Justin Schieber after the break. Stick around. We're going to be talking about God, the existence of God, Randall Rouser, the different discussions that we've had.
A whole bunch of amazing stuff. If you've got a question for him, 616-656-1680. Also, question of the day, what amendment to the Constitution went into effect on January 16th? We'll be right back.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio on WPRR Studios, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. Jeremiah Bannister, Joe Elder, and Justin Schieber, who is the co-author of the book An Atheist and Christian Walk Into a Bar, talking about God, the universe, and everything with co-author Randall Rouser. Justin, thank you again for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes. And debates about God, reasons of faith, we were just kind of scratching the surface of it. But you were talking about how Randall Rouser had written a book basically in defense of atheistic beliefs, even though he's a Christian. Can you talk a little bit more about that or some of the arguments that he proposed?
Well, it's not a defense of atheistic beliefs per se. It's a kind of defense, or it's more of a criticism against traditional Christian views of atheists as being, immoral. And so what he does is he looks at some of the biblical texts used to justify these kinds of attitudes, these more kind of bigoted attitudes toward atheists. And he concludes that a more careful reading suggests that this is just a misunderstanding of the idea. The specifics of which I can't recall at the moment, but the whole fact that he wrote an entire book about this I think was testament to his fair-mindedness toward these kinds of issues, and so a perfect candidate to explore this book with.
Yeah, and we've also noticed, too, you do pretty much what is close to the same thing with atheism, or from that perspective in Real Atheology, where I know there's been some times where people have gone after you for defending theistic beliefs or the philosophical definitions of it for that exact reason.
Yes.
Do you have any examples of that, or just want to comment on it?
Well, so I think that any question that speaks to the core of an individual, a core of one's identity, people are going to be very passionate about. And this kind of passion is going to contribute to a kind of blind spot, shall we say, philosophical blind spot, to where I only see the arguments for atheism and I don't even look at the arguments for theism, or I assume at the outset that they're all terrible, right? Rather than looking at the issue with a more nuanced perspective, right? And so while being an atheist, I recognize that there are some theistic arguments that at least have some substance and that should at least be appreciated for that fact. And so I part ways with other atheists who take a more kind of general view that all of these arguments are terrible and that theism is irrational by definition and all of these things, right? I find that kind of attitude to be not only philosophically naive, but profoundly unhelpful to the dialogue.
I remember going, I think we went, was it Baker Books? I bought a William Lane Craig book. It was a total waste of money. I could watch. Well, it's nothing against him. He's a brilliant guy, and credit where it's due. The guy's very super intelligent. But I could get a lot of that same information from his website and other things.
Sure.
But we went, and I was really impressed actually by something that you said, the way you broke it down. You were talking about probability with me, and you were talking about what if you have things on kind of on scales, right? There are certain arguments which seem to be more probable, in fact, on theistic schemes. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about other ones, I think it was naturalism, where you said we had bushes in front of us, these kind of flowery bushes, where you said if you put your hand in there and reach in and you pulled out, would it be natural? And if it was, if the world was this way and we're constantly reaching in to try to find evidence, if it was supernatural, the probability would be that we would have something anyway that we could point to that's not purely natural, right?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Right.
So there's an analogy.
I'm probably hacking it to a million pieces, but I'm trying to. Yeah.
Perhaps I used bushes, but there's an analogy by a philosopher by the name of Paul Draper who talks about two different jars. One mostly being blue jelly beans, but having a few red ones. And then there's another jar with mostly red ones with only a few blue jelly beans rather. So the question is, if you don't know what jar you picked from and you found a blue one, what is that evidence for? Well, that's evidence for the fact that you pulled it from the mostly blue jelly bean jar, right? So that's a kind of way to think about probability, at least in terms of the evidential value of certain observations. So when we think about, okay, we observe a lot of suffering in the world, right? That would seem like a suffering would be a bean from the atheistic jar. It's a bean that's more likely on the atheistic jar than on the theistic jar. And so to that degree, it confirms atheism against theism. But none of this stuff is full stop. It's all a matter of weighing the evidence here.
What do you think in the book? Maybe this is a weird question, but what do you think in the book was the strongest position? Not of yourself, but of Rausser. In the case for theism, what do you think of all of his arguments that he put forward? What do you think really stands out?
I think a perennial problem with atheist views or naturalist views are issues concerning metaethics. So metaethics is the question about what, at the fundamental level, what are moral statements? Do moral statements refer to facts about the world, or are these mere opinions? Is a moral statement like murder is wrong the same as I don't like chocolate ice cream, or is it more like a fact of the matter where it's like this way is west, right? Something that you can be wrong about in principle, right? He poses an epistemological problem for moral facts and says, look, even if there are moral facts on atheism, there doesn't seem to be any way by which we could learn these facts. So this is an epistemology, for those of you who don't know, is the study of what it means to know something, what justifies knowledge, what justifies belief, all these different aspects, right? So he's asking the question, how do we come to know moral facts on atheism? And that's a puzzling question on some views. So I think it's a legitimate question.
I would wonder, and I haven't read it yet, but I saw as I was scanning through this, talking about the messiness or the amount of theological disagreement, and I would wonder if that is kind of the exact dilemma, that it's a shared dilemma, because they can criticize epistemologically how we can reach these conclusions, and we can say the way it's fleshing itself out seems to be the same for you. But I wanted to ask this too. Were there any original arguments or formulations, or more original that because I know that you've formulated arguments before, even arguments that later someone sent you responses to that made you question and even not use it anymore. And so, were there any original arguments or formulations on either side of the debate that are presented in this book, or is it kind of a recasting of a lot of arguments that are currently out there?
Sure. So far as I'm aware, the theological disagreement argument is original to me. There's been a lot of philosophical discussion about religious disagreement, but none to my awareness, at least, that address the question in the particular way that I do in the book. Moreover, the argument from hostility of the universe, wherein I argue that the fact that the vast majority of the universe is hostile to life,
absolutely,
that argument, while not original to me, I think is more fully developed by me in the book, and I'm further developing it elsewhere. But the original credit of that goes to a good friend of mine by the name of Jeffrey J. Lauder. So there's at least two arguments that I think most people will not have heard of in the book.
See, and that's what is awesome to me. That, and I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? I'm not surprised, Justin. I'm just not. I've been following you, my man.
Yeah. Also in the book, you guys talk about the place for reason and faith, but it says the radically different concepts of God in various cultures, and that's what we've been talking about. And when we're talking about belief systems, it's almost like what you're saying with with atheists and their position on if there's moral truths or moral facts, right? there's still a question, too, of if there's a fact that there's an existence of God, why are there so many different cultural concepts of the same thing?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, so in the book, I address this question with a kind of analogy to start it off with. I talk about two tenants in an apartment complex who both speak to their landlord privately, but in their conversations with each other, they realize, they have very different opinions about what the landlord wants from them, about the price of rent and all this. Presumably, the landlord has an interest in correcting that misunderstanding, but we see no such thing from God among theistic believers.
It's an interesting analogy.
As we're running out of time, is there anything, of course, your website, and I'll reiterate all this as we're reading you out here, but is there anything you would like to update people about? You said yesterday that you have a debate coming up.
I do. On March 2nd of this year at Grand Valley State University here in, Allendale, Michigan, I have a debate with a friend of mine, Tim Arndt, on the problem of God and suffering. And so that should be an interesting discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
And you're debating a guy with a bow tie and suspenders.
Yes,
you're
I'm almost certainly going to lose.
You're going
after
lose,
a Tucker.
Bro.
You're going after a Tucker
done.
Carlson bow tie type.
He's
fellow.
going after Doctor Who's what he's going against.
Yeah.
He's gonna lose.
Nah.
I'm so excited about it. And it's at Grand Valley. And I'll tell you, if you haven't seen Justin debate, it's always a fun time. It is, and it's always pretty respectful. Rarely ever has there ever been a kind of a chide from the side that says, "Hey, man, that might have been a little bit too much." So it's always a pleasure to speak with you, to hear you present. And again, you'll be presenting this upcoming Sunday at Cafe Inquiry on 28th Street at Schuler Books in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm hosting that event with Dennis Gamer, so you're going to be doing that. And again, just as we're running out of time, I want to read his bio again because you got to go check him out. It's super important. He's from Reasonable Doubts. You can check him out at realatheology.com. He is a speaker. He's been in universities. He's been all over the place, even in Canada. And he's got a great book. I'm looking at it right now. It's An Atheist and a Christian Walk into a Bar, talking about God and the universe and everything, by Randall Rouser and Justin Schieber. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, live in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. Again, want to thank Justin Schieber for stopping by. What a great segment.
Oh, it's totally awesome, man. And he's still in the studio. You got to hop on the mic.
He's still here, man. He's still here.
You got to get on the mic one time. You got to say what you were going to say.
That's
you
right.
reached over there.
Oh, I was just expressing thank you to you guys for having me on again. It's always a joy to talk with you guys.
All right, thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Thank you,
yes, very much. I'll tell you, Joe, we worked hard to get this guy. I mean, we really twisted some arms. I got dressed nice and cute for him, sent a picture, and maybe I'll share it on Paleo Radio. It was the one, and you might remember this. It's a guy with one of those mullets where he's bald on top and he's got a long mullet in the back.
Oh, yeah.
He's wearing what looks like Speedo underwear.
Yes.
And he's got his leg, he's man-spreading, and he's laying on a bed that has guns and Guitar Hero guitars.
Sounds like a badass.
And yes, and that he had his legs up, and he looked like he had a spray tan, kind of in between his thighs. It was real terrible. But I sent it and told him that I was, getting spruced up for him so that he could come on the show. And, he said it was deplorable. It broke my heart.
Yeah. Oh, it was
broke
deplorable,
my heart.
huh?
And, and so I was afraid that I had pushed him away with my love. And so I'm just really grateful that he
was able to make it.
That he was able to make it today. And,
Oh,
Joe,
lovely.
speaking of something that's more likely to happen, better chances, you can win our WPRR magnet with the question of the day. The question of the day says, what amendment to the U.S. Constitution was put into effect on this day in history, January 16? So if you know what amendment to the Constitution was put into effect, and it's notorious, we've given that much away. Oh, is there anything more that we could give away, Joe?
Yeah, no.
Without just literally we're handing it away. And we don't, listen, we're a show that requires you to think. We don't want to simply hand it out.
Yes, and like we always say, don't cheat and use the Google machine.
Yeah, don't cheat. So make sure, give us a call, 616-656-1680 if you'd like to win that. And listen, whenever someone wins a magnet, they don't just win a magnet. They win a personalized handwritten letter, written and signed by Paleo Radio and our staff.
That's right.
As well, we had a Paleo Diva signed it last time, as well as the folks from Team Tiny Dancer signed it, because we had a decal with that one for Team Tiny Dancer. So we try to make it real sweet.
Yeah, we've tried to sweeten that pot, make the deal real good for you.
I'll tell you, Joe, this is so random. I didn't tell you I was going to bring it up during the show, but when we're talking about, sweetening the pot, and this is just a real cool thing, Angela and I have officially purchased a PETA-friendly bear-skinned rug.
Yes.
Good.
And fantastic. PETA-friendly, those are expensive.
Yeah, PETA-friendly. It is expensive. We didn't want any, we have enough protesters in front of our house every single day clamoring for our imprisonment and everything else. And so we definitely didn't want people outside being like, now they're sleeping on bear rugs.
That's
and
right.
I'm like, they're everywhere.
Yes. So I'm glad. It's a good announcement.
Yeah.
It came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, but I just want to let everybody know, all of the haters, listen, it is not a real bear. I did not go hunting with the Trumps. There's nothing like that happened at all.
No.
It is completely PETA-friendly, but it is a bearskin rug.
Yes, bearskin rug.
Yes.
Hey, we have a couple minutes, and I want to take the time to talk about a new telescope that China is building.
Woo!
This is from Yahoo News, but China is building the world's highest gravitational wave telescope. Think about that. This is by Himanshu Goenka, and it's International Business Times. They were proposed almost exactly 100 years ago by Albert Einstein based on his theory of general relativity, but it was only on February of 2016 that scientists proved the existence of gravitational waves. And now China is starting to work on the world's highest altitude telescope that can detect them. According to the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO, world scientists furnished the proof for the existence of the phenomenon that gravitational waves are ripples in the fabric of space-time that are caused by some of the most violent and energetic processes in the universe. The strongest gravitational waves are produced by catastrophic events such as colliding black holes, the collapse of stellar cores, or supernova, coalescing neutron stars or white dwarf stars, the slightly wobbly rotation of neutron stars that are not perfect spheres, and the remnants of gravitational radiation created by the birth of the universe itself.
And this is going to be located 5,250 meters. And for those who don't know, it's over 17,200 feet above sea level in Tibet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Chinese telescope will be
huge.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge.
And, that's the thing is people, I've looked through a telescope, a pretty nice one, and loved it, in fact. I saw a nebula. I saw two stars that orbit one another.
We're circling each other?
Yeah, circling each other. And we were way out in the boondocks. I mean, we were way, 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 way out. And to have no light pollution. And to see how clear it was in the sky.
Yeah.
To know that in order to see the furthest that we can possibly see, you need to have as minimal light pollution as humanly possible. Anything that's going to disturb that is going to make it all that more difficult for you to see.
And hence why they're going over to Tibet, not staying in the major municipal cities of China.
Yeah. And
smog kind of interferes with the whole telescope problem.
Yeah, you're going to have a hard time peeking through that, cutting it with a knife.
Yes. It says the region in Tibet has clear skies and minimal human activity, making it ideal for observing faint echoes from the earliest days of the universe soon after the Big Bang. Mm-hmm. So it is really intense. Now, this gravitational waves theory, this is really interesting because this is a lot like the theory of dark matter is today, where Einstein said if my theory is true, then there would be gravitational waves, and no one could see them and no one could prove they were there. Now it's 2016, we found it. So it's just an interesting thing. It's kind of too bad Schieber's not here because it does bring theological arguments, but people who say that dark matter has some supernatural remnants to it, or it has some special effect that guides our spirituality or anything like that, I would just say that it's very similar to what people were saying about things like gravitational waves a few years ago. We had the calculations to know that it existed and to know that it's not supernatural, and we can explain it, but we had yet to see it in the physical form, and then lo and behold, we come to that conclusion. I think we'll do the same thing with dark matter in the future.
Yeah, and controversies surrounding the number 0. Interestingly enough. I mean, that was something that was anathema. It was like the idea, the concept of a 0 was just no.
Yeah.
That was no, you can't, that's going to have theological ramifications.
Yeah.
But we have 0. And maybe it did.
Maybe it
maybe
did.
it did have theological ramifications. Look where we are now.
It opened up the world to many mathematical proofs that could not have been proven otherwise.
Of the 7 continents on Earth, only Asia, North America, and South America have mountains higher than Nagari number 2.
Yes.
So this is very, very high up compared to other mountains, in fact, around the Earth.
And that's actually the second phase of construction. When it goes into Nagari number 2, it will involve a series of telescopes that will be constructed even higher at an altitude of about 6,000 meters.
Wow.
No time frame has been given yet for the completion of the second phase, but the cost of building the 2-phase observatory is estimated to be about 130 million yen, or about $18.8 million. Mm-hmm. Which, hey, when people look at that and go, oh, look at the cost, you think, but the amount of information you can get. The thing about looking out into space that I don't think many people come back and realize is the amount of information you can get that can help your life in the future is grandiose. Like, you have to think, we went to the moon on instruments that weren't any better than our basic algebra calculators that high school students have. Think about where technology is today. A lot of that has to do with us pushing the edge of our understanding in space. It allows us to have better understandings of our electronics and our technological advancements here on Earth.
And they added that it's going to be operational by 2021. So it's not as if it's going to happen right away. It's going to take time. There's construction involved. There's a lot involved in this process.
Yeah.
And so we're excited to see what's going to come from this, what we learn from the universe on account of these things. When we get back, we're down to the last 15 minutes, and we still don't have a winner. Okay, there's no winner. Make sure to call Angela in the call center, 616-656-1680, if you would like to win our question of the day. The question, what amendment to the U.S. Constitution went into effect on this day in history, January 16th? The number, 616-656-1680. We've got a couple topics that we're going to juggle here, figure out which one's going to be the one we're going to choose for the final segment. You don't want to go anywhere. You're listening to Paleo Radio.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
616-656-1680. We're down to the final minutes, Joe.
The final minutes.
The final minutes of this show. And then it's going to be uploaded. It's going to be a bunch of fun. But we were kind of debating what we wanted to talk about. And the whole Chicago situation with the young man who was kidnapped and tortured, and it was broadcast on Facebook, we want to be able to dedicate more time.
We do.
To that. It's a big topic, and it's a very sensitive one. It's a very heated one. And I know a lot of people have a lot of things to say. So we were running out, and we thought, what other story should we talk about to fill this final 15 minutes? And I couldn't think of anything else better than celibate sex robots. And so we were going through and looking at a piece by Zara Mulroy over at The Mirror. Says the link between celibacy and longevity has been widely researched, and the findings from the University of Sheffield, as reported in the New Scotsman, indicate shunning sex is more conducive to a longer life than being active.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it reminds me of a joke that we were talking about before, where there was a meme that was shared of a doctor with a man he looked like he was elderly, but he said he wanted to live to be over 80. And the doctor gave him a series of questions, and he was saying, do you have intercourse often? He says, no. Do you do a lot of physical exercise, like extreme exercise? He says, no. So do you drive fast cars? No. Do you eat red meat more than once a week? He says, no. And then the doctor says, then why would you want to live past 80?
Yeah, what's the point? What's the point? It's apparently why nuns and spinsters tend to outlive those who have regular intercourse, though admittedly there are exceptions, and they bring up Hugh Hefner, and I thought that was quite a glaring one. And I thought, well, he kicked it for long. Is he still alive?
Yeah,
Actually,
he's alive.
Is he still alive kicking it?
He's still alive. 2016 couldn't take Hugh from us.
Yeah. It's kind of like Larry King. You're just kind of like, I mean, the
forever.
guy's basically a bag of bones. I feel
Yes.
badly. I mean, I don't know how he is even talking.
I am under the firm belief that many, many wealthy people can live for a very long time, and the secret is to steal hearts from other people, because Dick Cheney seems to have got it figured out.
And Rockefeller.
And Rockefeller.
He's on what? Like his eighth one.
It's like his eighth heart
transplant.
Yes.
And you're like, how is this even possible, bro?
Yes.
And then you just look at the money symbols on his tongue, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right.
That's how
him.
it is.
So, okay, Dr. Michael Sivajathy, the leader of the team, said, quote, nuns tend to have a longer lifespan than women with children. And most people know of someone with a maiden aunt who seems to live forever. The question is why? The study conducted used mealworm beetles.
Really?
Yeah, used mealworm beetles, which mate every day. And they die young. Okay, so while those which avoid mating, they live a lot longer. And it says this, quote, the mechanism is not the same in humans, but the principle is the same. In beetles, mating releases hormones needed to produce sperm in a male or eggs in a female, and that had a negative effect on the immune system.
Yeah.
So they were saying that the more that you do that, your immune system is kind of taking a hit, and they compare it to testosterone. And say, like, well, with testosterone, if you're taking it and you're using roids and you're juicing and you're getting that, it has an effect on different things, ranging from your hair to other things that seem to die quicker.
Yes.
And you're going to be beefcake. You're going to look like Cartman when he's drinking all the protein shakes. But you're going to you might die younger. On average.
That's absolutely true. Look at mixed martial artists who are in the day now, the ones that did really compete in the 90s when there was not a lot of regulation. It wasn't regulated by the Nevada State Boxing Commission. When it was that time, there's a lot of guys that were using heavy drugs and a lot of guys that were using steroids of many sorts. Those guys are dropping like flies now. Most of them not even making it to 55. Just heart attacks, heart issues, mostly due to their drug use and their very high levels of testosterone for many, many years.
I think that the rave circuit of 1999 is going to come back to haunt me. I definitely was loving designer drugs, no question about it, and having a lot of sex. I mean, that's just part of
that's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, I kind of pulled a Hunter S. Thompson year or two of my life, and I just I'm hosed. Joe.
Made it what
I'm
it is.
done. I'm done for, bro. I'm so done. But you know what? Hey, man, I've enjoyed life. I've enjoyed it.
There you go.
Right?
So where do sex robots come into this?
Well, sex robots, there's a big raging debate going on over this, real hard one to deal with, is that it seems like with these robots that are coming out, like it wasn't long ago that people could read articles that said that it was even frightening how lifelike it was for men. That these robots are being made, and that men were finding themselves actually enjoying the robot even more in the studies, kind of even more, and preferring it to their actual sex partner, and that it was it's inevitably going to be a problem. You're going to have divorce cases where it will involve the sex robot. Like that is going to happen. And so they did a study to find out how women react to it.
Yes, and how was that?
Bodies are too cold. Bodies are too cold, and that the robot does not move. So unless you're making it move, it is there. And so it's the person who did it and documented it and everything else, she writes about love and relationships and other things for a big publication. She went and experimented with the robot and said it's the only time that you would ever actually have an experience like that. You wouldn't actually have even remotely close. And if you did, is an experience with a lover, you may not want to be with that person again.
Yeah.
That person might be dead.
Yeah.
It's kind of cold, kind of cold skin.
Yeah.
Pretty firm, almost rigor mortis-like.
I think they're not adding in a factor that we need to really address, which is that artificial intelligence, we're going to approach a time where we ourselves can't really define what consciousness is. We have a hard time defining it. I can say I'm conscious because I know that I'm conscious, but I can't prove that you are, Jeremiah, because I'm not you. But at the same time, what we may run into that is a moral dilemma that I don't think humanity is seeing coming is, what do you do with machinery that you've built to serve purposes for you that, like, for instance, the washing machine, right? And if that washing machine has the capabilities to be sentient, what if it could tell you that it doesn't like washing dishes?
Yeah, what was the robot?
Well, what about the morality of having a machine if consciousness does get this way? The other angle to this, too, is to say, well, you don't do that. You don't give the toaster the capabilities of being smart enough to talk to you. Therefore, it will be
a robot slave.
It will mundanely do its slave work for you.
Right.
But when you're talking about sexuality, especially with women, there tends to be a more emotional connection to it, and you would want to have an interaction. Now you have a conscious being that can tell you if it wants to be a robotic sex slave or not. And I know people will maybe be laughing at this, but this is a serious thing to think about, that when we're approaching AI consciousness faster than we can understand what consciousness is. And then when those paths cross, you have an interesting dilemma in the fact that the things that we've made to do our quote-unquote slave work may be able to tell you that they don't want to do your slave work.
Gangs of robots joining together. You would have microwaves. You would have.
But what?
I mean, I'm saying that in jest, but I'm also saying for real. Like, if we're having this conversation, and this is what we do with technology all the time.
Yeah,
we find its utility. We make excuses for its continued use, almost practically unregulated. This constant drive forward, and we've identified it with progress. But then we have situations that can arise that weren't on the radar of most people.
Yeah.
And they think are a joke. And they think, well, what are you telling me? We're going to have drones?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I remember those conversations, man. I remember talking to people who thought it was just Looney Tunes to talk about drones. What are now called drones?
Settings for
and
drones.
Those same people are the ones that are like, hey, man, for Christmas I bought a drone. Watch this video of me going over to my neighbor's house. And then they talk about, their privacy.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, you're not even on the...
Because then this is why technology really interests me, though, because it brings up more moral and philosophical questions. It basically can churn out new moral and philosophical issues for people to hash over. And this is one that we have to discuss, which is going to be, we don't understand consciousness as well as we think we do, or most of us understand fully that we have a very limited collection of understanding on it. We do not understand consciousness the way we think, and we're pushing to have something get it and then be able to define it. I mean, we're approaching a moral question very quickly.
Yeah, and these are cropping up in different ways too. I mean, I watched a video about, what is it, man, where the dog can put its little cute paw on this little green glowing paw device, and it turns on a little
Mom
TV,
and Dad,
and you can talk to the puppy, is a dog chat or something like
little
that.
Dog Skype.
And then you've got that selfie-taken panda. I mean, what's up with that thing? Yeah. I mean, they figured it out. So now they take these adorably cute selfies. I read this. It seems the influx of tourists at the panda base has made the animals very used to the human visitors, so much so that they've picked up a few tricks. And there's this panda cub that gets these selfies, right? And it's in Chengdu. And so these it's on social media site, Sina Weibo, I believe is how you pronounce it. The pictures show the tourist using a selfie stick to take photos with the animal, which amazingly manages to sit up straight and put one of its paws on her arm as well, as if also attempting to control the remote shutter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which she probably would be. I mean, I really like to see those videos where we give our other ape ancestors technology like a hand phone and see what they do with it. It's actually pretty mind blowing. Where people say, "Wow, they look really human." Well, of course, because we are apes. Or really, when we do it, we look really apish. Would be the better way of saying it.
Have you ever just watched somebody drive by you in a car and think there are people who tell me that we're not great apes?
Oh, I think
just look at it.
I think that all the time.
Yeah, just look at them driving.
Yeah.
Look at the way they're sitting. Look at their faces. They're like chimp mouths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we do very natural acts, we look very, very animalistic. There's just no doubt. There's no doubt to it. When we do the things that animals have to do, the 3 Fs, we are very, very obviously animals.
Which is why people who studied bonobos for a long time, it was actually a rule. You could not record or have any stuff involving sex with them because they face one another like humans do.
Yes,
and it looks
do.
really, really human.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Humans look really bonobo.
They would say that the study of it was almost pornographic. So
They
it gives
did.
you an idea.
Well, there's the music, Joe.
There's the music. We're
It's
going to
over.
end on bonobo sex. Something interesting.
All right. Make sure to go to patreon.com/PaleoRadio as well as Spreaker.com/PaleoRadioShow.
Yes, and you can always follow us on Twitter at PaleoRadioShow. We love to hear from you. We love to stay active on social media. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be here next week with another jam-packed episode of all things fun and fantastic. Thanks again for listening.